Tomb Raider was developed by a small team at Core Design, a British studio based in Derby. At a time when most 3D games were still finding their footing, this tight-knit group set out to create something ambitious. A cinematic action adventure built around exploration, atmosphere, and a fully three-dimensional world. The project was led by designer and programmer Toby Gard, who conceived both the game's core mechanics and its iconic protagonist, Lara Croft. He was joined by a handful of programmers, artists, and designers who handled everything from level construction and animation to engine technology and sound, often wearing multiple hats throughout development. An important role in shaping Tomb Raider's identity was played by level designer Heather Gibson, who was responsible for constructing many of the game's intricate tombs and environmental puzzles. Neil Boyd contributed both as a programmer and as a level designer, building several levels himself, in addition to working on engine and gameplay systems. His dual role reflected the small, highly collaborative nature of the team, where technical and creative responsibilities often overlapped. The game's distinctive atmosphere was further elevated by composer Nathan McCree, who created a sparse, dynamic score that used silence as deliberately as music. Rather than relying on constant background tracks, McCree's compositions appeared at key moments to heighten tension and discovery. At the technical core of Tomb Raider was lead programmer Paul Douglas, who developed the game's custom engine. Working within the severe hardware limits of mid-1990s consoles and PCs, Douglas built a system capable of handling large, interconnected 3D environments, precise grid-based movement, and cinematic camera control. His engine made it possible to combine platforming, combat, and exploration in a fully three-dimensional space, something still relatively rare at the time. Gavin Rummery was one of the core programmers on the original Tomb Raider, contributing to gameplay systems and technical problem-solving throughout development. As part of Core Design's small team, he worked closely with designers and artists to translate ambitious ideas into functional mechanics within a brand new 3D engine. With limited resources and a great deal of creative freedom, the Core Design team relied on experimentation, technical ingenuity, and a shared vision to bring Tomb Raider to life, laying the groundwork for one of the most influential franchises of the 1990s. Released in 1996, after roughly 18 months of development, Tomb Raider marked a turning point in both game design and cultural impact. Development began in 1994 at Core Design. Initially, the protagonist was conceived as a male adventurer inspired by the likes of Indiana Jones. However, in an effort to avoid legal and creative overlap, Gard proposed a female lead instead. What started as a practical design decision soon revealed a powerful opportunity: a strong, capable, and appealing female character in a gaming landscape dominated by muscular male heroes. Yet, Lara alone did not define Tomb Raider's success. The game's uniqueness was equally rooted in its early and ambitious use of true 3D technology and the emergence of new home consoles such as the Sega Saturn, and most importantly, the Sony PlayStation. These platforms helped popularize not only 3D graphics, but also video gaming itself, opening the medium to a broader audience that had not existed just a few years earlier. With cutting-edge technology and a protagonist that could resonate with players, Tomb Raider offered something truly new. It delivered a cinematic experience that merged storytelling and gameplay, using voice acting and full-motion video to bring its world and characters to life. The result was a game that managed to speak to newcomers and seasoned players alike, one that felt intuitive, modern, and immersive in ways few titles had before. At its core, it represented a breakthrough in how game design, level architecture, and environmental storytelling could work together to guide, challenge, and engage the player, an aspect that this analysis will explore in depth. The game begins with a striking image, a nuclear test in Los Alamos. From within this explosion, a strange object is launched skyward before falling back to Earth unscathed. The object's survival implies that it is not of this world, or at least far beyond human technology. The camera reinforces this by tilting upward, framing the artifact as if it were a planet eclipsing the sun. As the camera closes in, the object reveals itself to be a mechanical device, something like a clock or an hourglass. The motif of time emerges clearly here. Instead of sand flowing through it, we see a slender, humanoid figure suspended inside vaguely feminine in form. This entire sequence tells us, without a single word, that humanity is meddling with something ancient and dangerous, and that it's only a matter of time before this power leads to catastrophe. The scene then shifts abruptly from the desolation of New Mexico in the 60s to a business meeting in India. The change of setting and tone is jarring but purposeful. We meet an American man whose southern accent and mannerisms instantly evoke the archetype of the video game hero. Through him, Tomb Raider establishes contrast. The traditional masculine adventurer is no longer the center of the story. This small inversion subtly announces the arrival of a different kind of hero, Lara Croft.
What's a man gotta do to get that kind of attention from you?
It's hard to say exactly, but you seem to be doing fine.
Well, great. Though truth is, it ain't me that wants you.
Oh?
No, Miss Jacqueline Natla does, from Natla Technologies. You know, creator of all things bright and beautiful.
Seal it, Larson.
Ma'am.
Feast your eyes on this, Lara. How does that make your wallet rumble?
I'm sorry. I only play for sport.
This new character doesn't show herself in person, but appears on a computer screen. Even Natla's name carries meaning. Natla, as an echo of Atlantean. This small linguistic clue, and the fact that she speaks from a device rather than appear in person, foreshadows her shady intent and her true origin. This short exchange tells us a lot about the people in the room. By contrast, Lara is instantly more likable than the other two. They're both capable, but she's clearly more competent, so much so that the woman on the screen is seeking her out for a job. Yet, they show a lack of empathy by assuming Lara would be motivated by money. At the same time, Jacqueline Natla comes across as highly intelligent and manipulative, twisting the offer in a way that immediately catches Lara's attention.
Vast mountain ranges to cover, sheer walls of ice, rocky crags, savage winds, and there's this little trinket. An age-old artifact of mystical power is buried in the unfound tomb of Qualopec. That's my interest. You could leave tomorrow. Are you busy tomorrow?
Finally, Jacqueline tells Lara about the mystical power hidden in the lost tomb of Qualopec in Peru. Now that's one hell of a hook both for us as the audience and for our protagonist. By the time the title appears, Tomb Raider has already done what few games of the era dared. It has set a tone of mystery, danger, and intelligence. The cinematic isn't just exposition, it's a thematic overture, preparing the player for a story where exploration, consequence, and curiosity are inseparable. When the player opens the main menu, Tomb Raider immediately reframes itself through Lara's personal space. The screen shows a Polaroid photograph of her home, while the menu itself is structured like a traveling bag, as if we are looking inside what she carries with her. The level selection is accessed through her passport. Every element reinforces the idea that this menu exists within the world of the character. The Polaroid of Lara's home also places that level at a specific point in time. It belongs to the past. We have already established the present moment through the meeting in India, and the narrative suggests that we are now traveling toward Peru. Yet the game allows us to step backward, accessing Lara's memories as a kind of flashback, returning to her home before the journey truly begins. The word home itself carries an instinctive association with safety, immediately suggesting a space free from danger and open to exploration. Upon entering the level, a short establishing cinematic introduces the setting. In a few seconds, we learn something fundamental about Lara. The European architecture of the mansion and Lara's accent evoke the image of British high society, often linked in the public imagination with aristocracy, refinement, and education. From the very start, Tomb Raider conveys a remarkable amount of information about its protagonist, not through exposition, but through cultural cues and visual storytelling. The game begins inside a large library. This setting not only confirms Lara's cultured nature, but also works symbolically. She is a character who seems to emerge directly from the stories of classic adventure books. For the player, exploration and knowledge, once experienced through reading, now take form through direct interaction.
Welcome to my home. I'll take you on a guided tour. Use the D-pad to go into the music room.
Lara's voice welcomes the player, breaking the fourth wall. Until now, interaction has been purely visual, but hearing Lara speak creates an immediate connection. Her voice humanizes her, grounding her as a tangible presence. She doesn't feel like an avatar anymore. She feels like a person addressing you directly, a companion about to guide you through this new world. The player is then prompted to move Lara using the directional pad and soon arrives at the music room. Inside are a grand piano and a harp, subtle reminders that Lara is not just an intellectual, but also someone trained in fine coordination and grace. The game invites you to experiment freely with jumps and rolls, reinforcing this idea mechanically. Lara's agility feels natural, elegant, and believable. This sequence elegantly introduces the player to the game's movement system while reinforcing who Lara is: athletic, refined, and graceful. Leaving the music room leads to the main hall.
Ah, the main hall. Sorry about the crates. I'm having some things put into storage and the delivery people haven't been yet.
Here, Lara apologizes for the mess, a brief but telling line that conveys manners and self-awareness. The hall, mostly empty and filled with wooden crates, serves a dual purpose. It gives a believable explanation for the lack of furniture while providing the player with climbable objects to learn new movement mechanics. Among the scattered objects, the player may notice a replica of the Ark of the Covenant. This detail works on multiple levels. It's a clear nod to Indiana Jones, but also a commentary on Lara's motivations. She is not interested in wealth. Her treasures lie in the thrill of discovery. This is reinforced moments later when a treasure chest can be spotted in a corner, valuable, yet forgotten. Lara, like the player, is driven by curiosity and imagination rather than material reward. She is, above all, a dreamer, a reflection of the player's own sense of wonder as they embark on this adventure together. Eventually, Lara leads us to what used to be the ballroom, now transformed into an obstacle course. This section teaches the remaining elements of the movement system: standing and running jumps, climbing, and grabbing ledges. It also establishes the importance of distance and timing. Here the game communicates a crucial message. The world of Tomb Raider is grounded in physical rules. Actions have consequences. Gravity, momentum, and spacing all matter, making this world feel tangible, consistent, and intuitive. After mastering these techniques, the player encounters the swimming pool. Water in games often carried ambiguous meaning, sometimes lethal, sometimes decorative. Tomb Raider takes care to show that water here is neither danger nor decoration, but a new space for exploration. By letting Lara dive, swim, and manage her oxygen, the game introduces a final key concept: risk and resource management within a believable environment. The tutorial concludes with Lara emerging from the pool, making a humorous comment about her wet clothes.
Right, now I'd better take off these wet clothes.
It breaks expectations, reminding the player once again that Lara is self-aware, capable of humor, reflection, and humanity. With that, the tutorial ends, returning the player to the main menu. In the span of a few minutes, Lara's home has accomplished something remarkable. It has introduced the player to every essential control and mechanic, while simultaneously establishing Lara's identity, personality, and values, all through environmental storytelling, tone, and interaction, rather than exposition. Lara's passport acts as our gateway to adventure. The next cinematic transports us to the snow-covered mountains of Peru, where a local guide leads Lara to an ancient stone gate, half buried in ice. We're told that this is the resting place of the tomb of Qualopec, a site deliberately hidden from the world. In just a few moments, the game convinces us that what Lara is about to uncover has remained lost for good reason, and that only she has the skill, intellect, and resolve to rediscover it. We watch as Lara examines the gate, studies its structure, and identifies a way to open it. She climbs the wall, activates a concealed mechanism, and the massive stone doors begin to move. But Tomb Raider is quick to remind us that action and danger go hand in hand. As the gate opens, a pack of wolves emerges. And though Lara tries to help, yet she is still unable to save the guide. This moment establishes her fallibility. Even Lara Croft can fail. As she enters, the door shuts behind her. In the last shot of the cinematic, she removes her shades, serving different purposes. First, now we really see her eyes, meaning she's not wearing a mask anymore. Second, we the players are the ones intimate enough to see Lara without her mask. A powerful connection with the player is established once more as we begin exploring the icy corridor she's dropped into. With the door shut behind us, the player immediately understands that there's no turning back, a subtle message that this game's narrative and gameplay are deeply intertwined. The game immediately gives us clues. On the ground, there are paw tracks left by the wolves we just fought. This place is dangerous. The tracks at a certain point move in a peculiar direction, giving away the presence of traps on the walls. When we continue, something unusual happens. The camera turns as Lara follows the path forward. Here, once again, the character comes to life and communicates with the player. In this instance, we could just follow her lead or move her forward and observe the apparently empty room in front of us. And here we have it. Our first secret of the game. A jingle plays, gifting us with a pleasing sound on top of the nice feeling of discovery, and reinforcing that gratification, giving the player an health pack as a reward. Analyzing this series of events from a storytelling perspective, Lara appears as a capable and efficient explorer, but we must help her. It's a perfect lesson in trust and cooperation. This partnership becomes the emotional foundation of the entire experience, and all of this is conveyed beautifully, just from that stylistic flourish of the camera turning. These experiences can't be forced onto people. They must be crafted with care and respect. returning to the main path. Now, another peculiarity of the game is established. Lara's hands are not weapons. Her hands are made for climbing and manipulating the environment, not for fighting. Her weapons are usually holstered. That brings us to separate the gameplay in two distinct parts: exploration and combat. The combat itself is serviceable, and the sound design of the weapons is spot on. That alone is satisfying enough, even if the combat itself shifts the paradigm of ranged combat from precise aiming to mobility. While the combat system could have been more refined, the developers deliberately kept it subdued. This prevents combat from artificially inflating the difficulty and from pulling attention away from the game's true focus: immersion, exploration, and movement. Soon after, the cave opens into a larger chamber. A stone column blocks our view, but behind it, a patch of green grass catches the eye. This sudden burst of color among the greys and whites is deliberate a visual guide that gently directs us forward. From this point on, the player learns to trust environmental cues. Color, texture, and contrast become tools for navigation. It also gives the place a new character. The overgrown nature introduces itself beautifully, giving us a neutral party that we can also read to our advantage. Following the traces of nature, we get to a lower room with nothing but a carved stone figure and a new gameplay element: a lever. Here, the game establishes a means to open doors and shows these elements as visually distinct. Now we get into a larger room with an obstacle on our right, a fence or wooden gate. Through the wooden gate, we can spot our goal, the place we need to reach. We climb up, and the game once again drives our attention within this detail-rich environment. Here, in the lower part, a pack of wolves comes out of their hiding spots, but we have a choice. We can use the two suspended bridges to try to avoid confrontation, or jump down and engage in combat with the wolves. In the next room, if you run recklessly, you'll most likely fall down. And here is where we encounter the most dangerous beast so far: a bear. A terrifying experience and a deadly trap for inexperienced players. I can see how some of us remember this traumatic experience to this day. But, observing, we see vegetation with dangling leaves, inducing the player to deduce that there is a gap underneath, making the confrontation with the bear optional. So far, fighting was mostly optional. But when we enter the next room, we're assaulted by a pack of wolves. Here, it's much harder to run than to fight. Establishing that combat, even if avoidable for the most part, makes a substantial part of the gameplay experience. Here, once again, if we observe the vegetation around, it draws our attention to a hidden platform on the wall, leading to yet another secret. And this time, it rewards the player with a giant carving on the wall. Communicating that exploration can give you not just mechanical rewards, but also visually pleasing ones. In this room, we open a door with another lever and climb a long, winding staircase trapped with darts, emerging into a room with a wolf and some distinct floor tiles. Now, it is implied that this room must contain a way out. But it is interesting how Ether Gibson, the level designer for this stage, didn't take anything for granted and created different means to introduce this new gameplay element. The wolf is there to prime the player to jump or run around the room, eventually landing over the crumbling floor and falling down. Or maybe the player can spot the slabs because they're different from the rest of the flooring we've seen so far, and they are also placed in the dead center of the room. This brings us to a large, elongated room, the same room we spotted earlier through the wooden gate we passed before. Pulling the last lever opens the massive stone doors ahead, leading us toward the next chapter of the journey. What begins as a simple descent into an icy tomb through the caves becomes a masterclass in interactive storytelling. one that merges character, world, and gameplay into a single, cohesive experience. As soon as we enter the level, we are ambushed by a pack of wolves, immediately implying that this level will involve more combat than the previous one. From here, there are 3 paths we can follow, and unlike the previous level, this one isn't linear. We're expected to explore our surroundings and find our own way to the exit. This first area of the city serves as a central hub, with paths running around buildings that surround a central plaza with a pool of water in the middle. From here, we are free to explore. Exploring further, we find an open stable, but a bear lurks inside, forcing us to fight or flee. We soon discover a locked door, which requires a key to progress, and another door, this time with a lever next to it. We can use the lever to explore the newly opened room and jump from this building to the next. Here, we are introduced to a new mechanical element: movable blocks. This encumbrance would later become infamous, cluttering games for years and often slowing the pace of exploration, with tedious movement and overcomplicated puzzles. The developers use this mechanic in different ways, mainly to allow players to reach higher elevations without relying on moving platforms, which could cause glitches and require constant collision checks. It is also worth noting how the system is introduced. The player falls into a small room and can't get out. Coming from higher ground, we spot a now unreachable large medpack that lies on an alcove high on the wall, and a differently textured block the only interactive object in the room. Pulling or pushing it by precise increments, the player can then use it to reach the alcove with the prize. Moving the same block reveals a passage to the next room. Exploring this new room, we find 2 key items: a silver key and a golden idol. But we're still locked in until the bright yellow ceiling light draws your attention to a ledge we can't reach yet. Connecting the dots and moving the block from the previous room to this one allows us to climb up to a balcony leading back to the main plaza. With the silver key in our possession, the locked door can be opened, allowing access to the second hub of the level. This temple presents just one clear way to go, which will eventually open the other doors at the temple entrance. The first passage has a pool of water serving as safety net. Until now, swimming wasn't mandatory, but here, water is presented as a reassurance while we climb the stairs to the top. It subtly reinforces the idea that you shouldn't be afraid of diving, an ever-present concept in this section of the stage, until eventually the developers will force you to swim with the infamous lever next to a door that, instead of opening it, triggers a trapdoor beneath your feet. This is usually something to avoid in level design. The game has been building trust with the player and explicitly associated levers with doors. This subversion of expectations functions as a warning. Heather Gibson lets us understand that this trick could appear again later, possibly with lethal consequences. At the same time, by forcing the player into the water, the game nudges us to get our toes wet. Underwater exploration was until now optional, but it will soon become essential for progression. At this point, you could just finish the level by opening the last room and using the golden idol on the lock. Or, if you've gained enough confidence, you might backtrack to explore the underwater area in the plaza. The pool in the center of the plaza leads to an underwater area. Following the submerged corridor, we reach a large underwater chamber that looks like an aqueduct. Exploring this huge area, we might find yourself trapped with no clear way out and our air supply running low. For new players, this can be overwhelming, possibly leaving them to abandon the dive and continue elsewhere. And that's fine, since, like most of the secrets in this game, this zone follows the principle for which optional zones are meant for multiple playthroughs. If we decide to go further, we can find 2 levers underwater. One is easy to find and clearly opens a trapdoor above you. This one can save you if you connect the visual clues in time. The other lever, harder to notice, leads to yet another secret room. Together with the constant threat of drowning, this creates real tension, forcing you to make multiple dives and orient yourself underwater. It's clever level design. The area is made of just 2 rooms and 2 corridors, but it feels much larger because of its dense and disorienting design. Lost Valley opens in a cave, and the sound of water permeates the corridor we are in. As we explore the small platform where we find ourselves, we can spot multiple potential paths to follow. Ahead of us, there is a small aperture in the stone that we can't reach, but it hints that we should keep our eyes peeled and try different routes, implying that the caves are interconnected. The water is surely the main presence in this room, and the fast-moving river brings us to the main theme of this level, the waterfall. This is our main objective, even though the player is not yet aware of why or how. The level design forces you to notice the waterfall, also through a change in perspective as we fall into the cave below. But if we are observant, we can check the cave before entering the water and spot a clear path that could bring us back up. The level clearly wants to wash us into the cave below, but if we are stubborn and put in some effort, we can find a path through the rocks following the small river to its source. This path is harder, and most likely a first-time player will be swept away by the current. But if we manage to reach the source, we discover traces of civilization, a bridge, and on the other side, a series of cogs that are part of a complex mechanism serving to close a floodgate beneath us. Here we can explore the conduit, and even if we don't immediately notice it, we can read through colors and textures how the level tells its story. The yellow bricks and passageways will be consistent throughout the entire level, hinting at human intervention. It also tells us of a civilization that, though ancient, had the means to carve solid rock and build such a complex mechanism. The mechanism itself isn't functional. It's clearly missing 3 pieces. And there we have it, our goal. Everything comes together. We have to find these 3 cogs in order to close the floodgate and stop the waterfall. Exploring the cave, we find a familiar presence. Wolves. Here they have their lair. This also re-establishes the naturalistic nature of the game. So far, we have seen wolves, bats, and bears that now populate these ancient ruins once inhabited by humans. As we move deeper beneath the lost city, we begin to piece together how these people might have lived. The mechanisms we saw before were probably feeding fresh water to the city above. Everything fits together cohesively. It feels like true exploration, and the fantasy elements are quite restrained. This feels like a cohesive, believable place grounded in reality, a message that's reiterated often during the first hours of the game. But now, something unusual and unexplainable is about to happen. In fact, through a collapsed wall different in color from the rest of the cave, we find an opening with a skeleton, suggesting an earlier expedition gone wrong. This isn't the first skeleton we discover, and they're often placed near modern tools, like a shotgun, or in this case, a medipack. Moving forward, when you enter the space ahead, you likely slide down, losing control for a second, like you tripped. Immediately after, as you look around trying to find a way back, you are suddenly assaulted by two bright red creatures in a lush green setting. These creatures are nothing like what you've seen so far. You might need a moment to process the fact that these are dinosaurs. Once you overcome the panic of the encounter, the ground trembles and a massive creature bursts from the foliage with a fierce roar. Most likely, this site haunted a generation of gamers, but I want to analyze the structure of the Lost Valley proper, the section with the T-Rex. I firmly believe the T-Rex was not intended as a combat encounter, but as a mechanical puzzle. If we holster our weapons and value the life of what we thought to be an extinct animal, we can actually play this section as I believe it was originally intended. Immediately to our right, we can spot a hole in the wall leading to a safe position. Like a cat and mouse game, we must rely on our reflexes and wits to overcome this obstacle. Following the cave we just discovered, we find a patch of vegetation visually linking the interior with the exterior. And once again, we emerge outside. Now, thanks to our higher ground position, we can observe our surroundings better. A waterfall with a small cave above, a water cave below, and a ledge to our right. We can't quite see the continuation of the valley, but regardless of our choice, we must act quickly. The T-Rex is lurking in the valley. I also like how the valley feels like an extension of the creature itself. This place is clearly the lair of that majestic beast. Everything here is huge, in contrast with the man-made spaces we explored so far. The color of the vegetation and the T-Rex's skin are both shades of green, hinting that this place belongs to the creature, and we are the intruders, the trespassers. When we explore the underwater cave beneath the waterfall, we find ourselves in another chamber. Once again, the game guides us through color. The wall we must climb is light grey, and on top of it, we can spot a patch of yellow bricks, hinting that we must search for human-made structures to find the cogs we need. With the first cog in our bag, we can continue our exploration. With this new knowledge, we observe the valley again and spot a suspended bridge above. These are our objectives. As we climb a ledge on the side of the temple, running away from the massive threat pursuing us, we are immediately guided again by the yellow brick path. Now it's clear that the level is communicating effectively with us. In this cave, the yellow path is even more prominent. You know what to look for, and you're on the right track. We are presented with a striking image of the suspended bridge over the valley. From this position, we can take in the magnificent sight of the valley and the massive creatures that inhabit it. That sense of grandeur is enhanced by the music theme that starts just as we're about to witness the view. On the other side of the bridge lies our goal, and I love how they enhance the tension of this jump by shifting the camera, making you really feel the thrill and danger of the moment, giving you the visual information to grasp the height at which you're suspended, with the roaring dinosaurs raging below. As we gather the cog, we can now explore the final section of the Lost Valley proper, the Water Sanctuary. Here, an altar is protected from the outside by a curtain of flowing water. This is the most evident example of the visual guidance we've discussed, driving the player toward what, conceptually, sounds like a needle in a haystack. It's also likely the first place you'd reach while running away from the T-Rex. The other passages and caves I've mentioned are far less obvious than this temple. The chase itself pushes you into the sanctuary, and in the end, perhaps while trying to find a way out, you're rewarded with the cog, reminding you of your true objective. I also like that there's a secret above the sanctuary that ties back to the earlier expedition we speculated about. Despite the black void surrounding everything here, this place should have been open to the sky. Further proof of this lies atop the sanctuary roof, where we find several modern supplies scattered around, suggesting that the expedition parachuted into the valley and that its explorers were military or mercenaries. Maybe this hints at an early attempt by Natla to find the first piece of the mysterious artifact, giving us both a story thread and a sense of responsibility to uncover more. Finally, going back the way we came, leaving the endangered species behind in their natural habitat, we can repair the floodgate mechanism, drying the river and opening the path behind the waterfall. The circle closes, and we can now proceed further into the depths of this ancient place. As a tomb raider, we're raiding a tomb all right. So, the level starts by connecting directly to the Lost Valley ending, in a tunnel carved into the stone behind the waterfall. Here, we're welcomed by a tall chamber with idol statues all around, and just one clear way to go. We run forward, and at the top of the slope, a boulder falls from the ceiling, speeding toward us. And since we're no Chris Redfield, we'd better start running. Once we get back up, a gate blocks the passage to the king's chamber. The camera once again shifts dramatically, making sure we see our prize, the Scion. It rests on an altar in the center of the room, just out of reach. The level welcomes us by trying to kill us right away, just when the player was probably ready for a victory lap after the boss encounter with the T-Rex and the complicated floodgate puzzle in the Lost Valley. But the game reminds us it's not time for the prize yet, tossing a giant rolling boulder in our face that will most likely kill you if it's your first time playing. When you manage to dodge the boulder, if you follow the movement, you could spot that there is a lever on the other side of the room. I also want to comment on the shifting colors we're witnessing, because I think even this subtle detail is foreshadowing what's to come. We're moving from the caves, mostly white, and light bluish grey with some bright greens, to Vilcabamba, with greys and yellows. The Lost Valley mixed grey, green and ochres as visual cues for the player. Now, in the tomb of Qualopec, flashy red, marily yellows and bone white are predominant, suggesting something organic, and foreshadowing the colour theme we'll see much later in the game. Here, the game uses colour and structure, with its long corridors and large chambers, to give the impression of venturing into the belly of a beast, down its throat to its stomach. If there weren't this shift in tone, structure and colour, we might later doubt or resist what the game is about to show us. The level designer, whether deliberately or not, is priming us to accept what we're about to witness. Now, our goal is clear, and I like how they reiterate it by showing us the Scion again. Up to this point, the game has been more about survival than the main objective. But now the developers make a bold statement. This game's narrative is cohesive. The mechanics serve the story, leading us to uncover the mysteries it presents. The story is the driving force that ties everything together. That's worth emphasizing, because at the time, this kind of narrative approach was mostly seen in RPGs or point-and-click adventures. The general public was used to 3D games as a series of mood-based maps, rather than cohesive, compelling stories. Story and action were usually seen as opposites. Tomb Raider dares to connect the two, which was a challenge both creatively and commercially, not to mention technically. With true 3D, developers could finally tell stories also through color, structure, and cinematic camera placement. They could guide your attention like in film, using music, sound, and visuals to evoke mood and thought. And I believe this cinematic approach to storytelling is one of the main reasons Tomb Raider reached such a wide audience, including people who had never played games before. Despite being challenging, it was approachable. You could learn its language the same way you learn an instrument. The level layouts and mechanics taught you everything you needed to know. Back in the main chamber, the game now presents a familiar structure, a central hub connected to multiple puzzle rooms. Compared to the previous, more labyrinthine levels, Tomb of Qualopec is simpler and more focused. There's only one real choice, but the designers still add flavor and meaning. The 3 icons on the gate match the ones in the small chamber down the hall, which connects to 3 other corridors. It's clear these corridors lead to ways to open the 3 gates. The placement of the save crystal in the middle reinforces this. This ties back to what I said earlier. Even though the game is difficult, it's always accessible. Here we see that segmentation formula, 3 separate challenges, each one dangerous enough to make you die and reload. But the punishment is mitigated because the rooms are independent. If you fail in one, you can try another. The rooms are also structured as incremental mechanical challenges. The room on the right is just a block puzzle, a simple one, with a trap at the end that can kill you only if you're unaware of it. The middle room is a straightforward fight against wolves. There's a block at the top of the small arena, which is less a puzzle and more a way to make sure you defeat the enemies first, rewarding your fighting skills with 2 metapacks afterward. Now, I want to mention something about the early Sega Saturn version, the one I'm playing here. This build feels slightly harder than the PlayStation version. Enemies seem tougher and deal a bit more damage. I imagine the original intent was to make combat more challenging and to balance these rooms around different aspects of player mastery. But the final release feels more restrained, and I actually appreciate that. The team probably realized they didn't have time to fully flesh out the combat system before shipping, so they toned it down. You can tell by small details like those 2 extra metapacks left after the fight that this area was once meant to test players much more harshly. The last one. The left room is the most difficult of the 3, and, in fact, the game subtly suggests you tackle it first, hinted by the layout of the closed gates. This room starts by messing with your perception. You enter and immediately see a lever, with only one clear route. So, with typical video game logic, you pull it, assuming it's needed somewhere. But that lever moves one of 2 columns that act as platforms in the room's center. After pulling the lever and trying to reach the next ledge through winding stairs and corridors, you realize you actually needed the block in its resting position, and you just messed up by pulling the lever without first observing the environment. So what you're meant to do is use both columns as platforms to reach the final opening. After clearing the 3 rooms, we open the corresponding gates. After all those tight corridors, we're rewarded again with a visual spectacle. A wide hall rising toward a grand staircase surrounded by statues and carvings. A decorative red carpet guides us upward, and the moment we step in, dart traps remind us we're not welcome. At the top, the camera shifts again to show off the full spectacle that the technology could offer. And there it is, the Scion, resting on a pedestal. But as we move forward, the camera reveals a throne with a skeleton seated upon it, and 2 mummies standing at its sides like guardians. The 3 icons from the challenges reappear here, facing the throne. This isn't the first time we've seen these icons. They also appeared above the stone gate that concealed the entrance to the tomb of Qualopec. If we look closely, the central icon above the throne is the same one where Lara found the mechanism that opened that gate. This detail clearly connects Qualopec with that specific symbol, suggesting there are 2 more pieces to the puzzle, something Larson will soon reveal right after this sequence. When you enter the room with your weapon drawn, Lara aims at one of the mummies. If you approach it, it suddenly lunges towards you, a moment that most players will probably miss, but it foreshadows what's to come later. Anyway, we're here to raid tombs, and that's exactly what we're about to do. But as soon as we grab our prize, in true fictional archaeologist fashion, the ceiling begins to crumble. The tomb is collapsing, and the mystery will soon be buried forever. We need to escape. There's no gameplay timer, but if you've ever played this game and instinctively ran for the exit as soon as the rocks started falling, that's a testament to how masterfully the level design immerses you in its atmosphere. As you reach the exit, you're immediately ambushed by Larson Conway. This serves more as a cutscene than a challenge, pushing the story forward and giving us context for the next location. It also acts, at least in spirit, as the traditional boss fight that closes a set of levels, or a world, to use Super Mario terminology. We have to remember that games speak a language different from books or movies, and certain elements are essential to that structure. The boss fight at the end of a world marks the close of a chapter, a satisfying epilogue to what we've just experienced, priming us to move on to more dangerous stages and deadlier antagonists.
Wait, we're talking about the artifact here?
Damn straight we are. Right up.
Hold on. I'm sorry. This piece, you say. Where's the rest?
Miss Natla put Pierre DuPont on that trail.
And where is that?
Ha! You ain't fast enough for him.
So you think all this talking is just holding me up?
I don't know where his little jackrabbit frog legs are running him to. You'll have to ask Miss Natla.
Thank you. I will.
After completing the first section, we're presented with an action scene, a sequence that connects the dots and gives context for the next part of our journey. But before moving on to St. Francis's Folly, I'd like to pause and talk about how this cinematic is presented, because it plays an important role in how we perceive the characters and how the game starts building expectations for what's to come. Lara is placed in an unusual setting, a modern cityscape at night with the lights and sounds of the streets below. We're about to enter Natla's office. Among all the possible ways the developers could have shown Lara getting there, they chose this one, a moment that would later become iconic for her character. She cuts the metal cable of an external elevator to propel herself upward onto the roof, revealing that we are now at Natla's headquarters. I like how this scene feels like a reference to Curtis and Keeley's The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938, which, by the way, still looks amazing. It even works as a subtle double homage to Prince of Persia, which famously borrowed its sword-fighting animation from that very movie. This reinforces the classic action hero archetype, superimposing Lara onto it and ramping up the energy of the scene, once again establishing that Lara means business. It might be a stretch, but there's something symbolic here too. Lara is doing something illegal, breaking into private property, which shows she's willing to break the law if necessary. This connection to a legendary figure like Robin Hood makes it clear that even when her actions are morally ambiguous, she's still the hero of the story. Inside Natla's office, we find a diary disguised as a prayer book. Its author appears to be a Christian monk, Brother Herbert, who writes about how the tomb beneath the decorative temple of St. Francis's Folly is actually the resting place of one of the three kings of Atlantis, Tihocan. Here we also learn about the three fragments of the Scion, a revelation that gives us not only an important piece of the plot, but also a new sense of urgency about the artifact's power and danger. The Scion, split into three pieces that together form a map to a lost and mystical place, might be a nod to the Golden Map in the Golden Voyage of Sinbad.
Relocated now to St. Francis's Folly, new temptations torment me. Rumour amongst
my fellow brothers is that entombed beneath our monastery is the body of Tihocan, one of the three legendary rulers of the lost continent Atlantis, and that with him lies his piece of the Atlantean Scion, a pendant divided and shared between the three rulers, which curbs tremendous powers.
I really appreciate the transition in this sequence, the way the new character's voice fades in, immersing us in the story while mirroring Lara's own focus as she reads. This choice adds another layer to her characterization. She's a reader, someone capable of connecting with the humanity behind the text, of reading between the lines, so to speak. The crossfade between her voice and Brother Herbert's conveys that beautifully. She feels respectful here, and that's important because we've just seen her breaking into someone's office. It helps reinforce the idea that she's not the villain. This sense of moral contrast appears again when we reach St. Francis Folly in Greece, where Pierre Dupont has left his garbage right in front of the archaeological site. Lara immediately calls it out, noting that even from a sketchy rival, she expected a bit more respect from a supposed scholar.
Pierre, you litterbug.
Finally, I want to talk about the level's title, St. Francis Folly. The word folly, aside from its usual meaning of unwise or irrational, has a specific meaning in architecture. A folly is a decorative or eccentric structure built mainly for aesthetic purposes rather than for function. These were especially popular in 18th–19th century Europe, when wealthy landowners would commission mock ruins, towers, temples or grottos on their estates purely to evoke beauty, mystery, or a romantic sense of decay. The term itself comes from the French folie, meaning madness or foolishness. Adding a poetic irony, the building is both an act of vanity and of beauty. As soon as the level starts, we're immediately attacked by two lions, a clear sign that we've entered a different biome. We soon find ourselves inside a structure reminiscent of an ancient Greek temple, with huge crumbled columns dividing its naves. In front of us stands a closed door and a movable block in a sliding slot, clearly part of some kind of mechanism. When we push the block, the door opens. But as soon as we step through, it slams shut behind us and we're ambushed by aggressive apes. Here we must find a lever to reopen the door, and when we do, we discover the movable block has been shifted out of place and Pierre is attacking us. This moment introduces a new layer of challenge for this section of the game. Not only do we have to find a way forward, but now we must also watch out for a saboteur. It's a great way to build character for our antagonist while adding tension to the exploration. I also want to point out that this level features 3 secrets that are mechanically very difficult to find. Even with a guide, a new player might struggle to reach them. These challenges are meant for a second playthrough. Another key element of this level is how it introduces a new layer of exploration. Up until now, the levels were developed mostly on the horizontal axis, but Tomb Raider is true 3D, and this level is all about the vertical. Once we find the correct way to progress, we arrive at a massive tower filled with platforms circling the walls. In the center stands a huge pillar hiding the various buttons we'll need to open the rooms scattered around it. Here, the challenge focuses on vertical traversal. The placement of doors and levers forces us to move up and down multiple times, trying to find the fastest path. Heather Gibson structured this section to make us understand height and distance, a skill that will become absolutely essential later in the game. Interestingly, this isn't a huge level in terms of map size, yet it takes 30 to 50 minutes to complete. Even after multiple playthroughs, the layout remains intricate enough to make us feel trapped inside a machine's gears, yet there's still enough space to breathe, leaving us with a sense of vertigo while exploring. This place feels dangerous. It truly conveys the sensation that you could slip and fall at any moment. The tension comes from the structure itself. There's no need for traps or hidden enemies. Everything is visible, and yet the traversal feels perilous and demands your respect. Each room we unlock is named after a mythological figure, and I think there are different ways to interpret this. The different mythologies referenced by the doors may be tapping into the idea that the Atlanteans are the root of all human culture. This interpretation might be a stretch, and perhaps the developers simply wanted to evoke a certain atmosphere rather than imply a deeper connection. But as we go further into the narrative, it becomes somewhat plausible that this was intentional, or at least consistent with the world building that emerges later on. Descending all the way to the bottom of the tower, we find a huge gate locked by metal bars, each decorated differently. On either side of the door are 4 keyholes. Our goal is now clear. We must find 4 keys to unlock the gate and progress deeper into the story. Once we understand our objective, we can locate the 4 levers that open the corresponding doors. We're free to approach this however we want. We can, for example, open all doors first and then tackle each one, or open a door and explore it right away. The game even shows us which door we've opened, guiding us visually and giving us flexibility. This segmented design keeps frustration low, since we can always reload from the top of the tower and choose a different path if one proves too difficult. Each of the 4 rooms presents a small thematic puzzle. The real test of this level lies in navigating the tower itself. Still, the rooms each have their own flavor. Starting from the bottom, we enter the Damocles room. A set of columns forces us to take a winding path, and interestingly, the trap isn't active at first. We can explore freely. Magical swords hang from the ceiling. When we open the inner sanctum and collect our first key, the trap triggers. The sword's shadows start rotating, and if we run or jump, they home in and kill Lara instantly. The solution is to walk slowly. If we move calmly, the swords fall and miss us. Next state is the Thor room, dedicated to the god of thunder. We're greeted by a Tesla coil discharging electricity all around. The floor and ceiling display colored plaques that might suggest a pattern in the lightning's movement, but walking along the walls is enough to reach the other side. There, we find a massive hammer above an Omega symbol, a hint of what's next. Standing on the symbol triggers the hammer to fall, so we must quickly move away before it crushes us. It's not particularly difficult, but like Damocles, it's more of a riddle. When the hammer hits the ground, the shockwave dislodges blocks from the ceiling, allowing us to climb up and retrieve the Thor key. The Neptune room comes next. Here we're dragged to the bottom of a flooded chamber, racing against time to pull a lever and open the gate to the Neptune key before drowning. Finally, the Atlas room. This one is inhabited by an aggressive ape, and we're trapped in a cage with it. Once we open the gate and start to climb out, a boulder comes rolling toward us. The setup is trickier than it seems. We can't simply sidestep because we're confined in the cage. The solution is to roll at the last moment and grab the ledge, letting the boulder pass safely over us. And, for a brief moment, Lara mirrors the figure of Atlas, bearing the weight of the world on her shoulders. Once we collect all 4 keys, we can finally open the main door, though Pierre doesn't miss the chance to harass us again on the way down. We must stay undercover and retaliate once we reach the final platform. Before moving on, I want to mention the final secret of this level. It's a reward in itself, a culmination of everything we've learned. You open an easy-to-spot door at the bottom of the room using a pressure plate located at the top of the tower. But it's timed. To reach it, you must now use your full understanding of the level's layout, a place that once felt intimidating but now feels like your own domain. That sense of mastery of turning fear into familiarity is the real reward. It's far more meaningful than any achievement pop-up could ever be. This is how a game transforms something virtual and intangible into something that feels real. It's not about logic or realism, it's about meaning, about how frustration, fear, and triumph combine into an experience that truly stays with you. The Colosseum. When the stage begins, we immediately sense that something is different. This level was designed by Neil Boyd, the same level designer who worked on the Lost Valley. As we saw before, his style differs from Gibson's, but the differences in design go far beyond aesthetics. As we will see throughout this chapter, there is a substantial shift in how the level is presented to the player, and in how the player is meant to approach it. Right from the start, the only way forward is through the water. As soon as we dive in, a crocodile appears and pushes us onward, literally forcing us to move. Once we climb out, the use of contrast guides our attention to a small doorway ahead. And if that weren't clear enough, a lion bursts through that door, loudly emphasizing that this is where we should go. If we follow these hints and enter the doorway, another lion emerges from the left-hand room, pulling our focus once again. Inside, we are presented with a clever little lesson in level design. Through a gate, we can spot a lever we can't yet reach. The game shows us our goal before giving us the means to achieve it. It started by using the crocodile to push us out of the water, then used contrast and the first lion to make us notice the first door, and finally placed the second lion at the corner to guide our attention toward our objective. Now we know what we must do: find a way inside. Exploring the exterior of the structure, we eventually find a way to reach a balcony. Again, through careful use of contrast, our eyes are drawn to a hole in the wall ahead. Even with their limited tools, the developers managed to create a convincing enough illusion to trick our perception of space, making us understand light and volume naturally. By today's standards, the engine and level editor may seem primitive, but at the time, they were revolutionary. Here, we must traverse a large pit with 2 crocodiles below. This is not particularly challenging. There is even a medepack down there, so falling is not a major punishment. This could easily have been a dull moment, simply holding 2 buttons for 30 seconds. But by tapping into our atavistic fear of heights, the scene feels tense. The level constructs the moment by shifting the camera to reveal the crocodiles waiting below, ready to snap at us, and uses the game's slow shimmying movement to build tension. This is a great example of how technical limitations can become powerful design tools. After emerging from the cave, we finally reach the lever we spotted earlier. But before we can pull it, a wide staircase ahead demands our attention. We climb, and once again the music, just like in the broken bridge scene in the Lost Valley, elevates the sense of grandeur of the vast open area that unfolds before us. A large arena filled with wild beasts. We are standing in the stands of an ancient Colosseum. Pierre appears once again. His presence here serves as both a reminder of our rival and a narrative hint. The wild animals gradually repopulating the arena below seem to be his doing, suggesting that he may be the one releasing them from their cages in an attempt to kill us. In fact, later during our final encounter with Pierre in this level, this idea is reinforced because he appears to fight alongside a lion. Perhaps he is meant to be a kind of beastmaster. After defeating him and his crazed beasts, we are free to explore the open area. However, unlike previous levels, where challenges were segmented but it could be tackled in any order, here the structure is more linear. The challenges are laid out in a specific sequence. Each time we enter a new room, we are effectively locked inside until we succeed. This design choice reinforces the theme of gladiators who, trapped in the arena, are forced to fight their way through. The rooms themselves are technically more demanding than those we have faced before. The challenge with a timed door is particularly tricky. You must perform the movements perfectly, or the gate will slam shut again and again until you manage to slip through. Succeeding opens a door, allowing further progress. Once again, survival is our immediate goal, but soon we reach an elevated spectator chamber with an iron gate. Below, we can see a giant sealed door that clearly marks our next objective. The game once again shows us the goal before giving us the means to reach it. A design trick that is much harder to pull off than it seems. Often, players find the puzzle pieces first while exploring, since the keyhole or the passage where those pieces are used usually appears near the end. But here, the goal is shown before the means to solve it. This also means that progress requires backtracking, opening doors in the outer rooms of the arena one by one. Each room contains a challenge and a lever, straightforward enough, but a few stand out. The second room, for instance, includes a hidden secret that demands tight, precise jumps, a satisfying test of mastery over the controls. The highlight, however, is the final room. Pulling its lever opens the massive door we saw earlier, and we are even shown the door opening in a cutaway shot, tempting us to rush back immediately. But that would be a mistake. If we pay attention, there is more here. Behind the lever is a space concealed by the movable block we just pushed. In the previous room, the layout only allowed the block to move forward, since it was a 2x2 space. But this room is slightly larger, 2x3, subtly hinting that the block can also be pulled. Doing so reveals a hidden chamber containing the true means of escape, the rusty key. This portion of the level is even toned down in the PlayStation version, moving the lever to a different position than in the Saturn version, which made the rusty key much harder to find. Backtracking one final time to the now open giant door, we discover that it is blocked by a cave-in. The real exit is instead the Iron Gate, where we must use the rusty key, leading us into the underground canal and toward the next chapter of Lara's adventure. As we emerge from the water, the level structure presents to us three different directions. In this level, the main task for the level designer was how to guide the player through the level's gimmick, Midas's hand, without making it obvious from the start. The first action that Neil Boyd did was to construct a crossroad of sorts, assuming that the player would most likely emerge from the opposite side of the underwater gate, and as such, their eyes would be drawn to the busy entrance, which is well decorated and calls for attention. Exploring the room, you can find an entrance well hidden by textures that blend together in a way that trick the eye's perception of depth. But when entering, an opening on the wall lets you clearly spot a lever. Pulling it will start a cutscene with a gate in a lush, overgrowth green garden drawing our attention. If we were to explore the garden, we would find the column to be climbable, an unusual structure to climb. To guide us into finding this out, Mr. Boyd places a large medpack on top of the archway, in clear view. Climbing up a music theme starts playing. And if we follow the newly opened path, we are welcomed to quite a spectacle. A flowing gold light illuminates the caved-in room, and we can see the remains of what in origin must have been a massive statue. But only the base and a disembodied giant hand are left to give us an idea of the statue's original scale. On the statue's base, let us spell out the name Midas. We could assume this room that is so elaborately created to be just another visual spectacle for the sake of immersion. But here we find different hints to its original intent. There is a save point on top of a ledge. We know those are usually positioned before or after puzzles or encounters, and marks the beginning of a new section in the level. Also, in this room, we find no resources to gather. Unusual for a secret of this game, so something else must be here. And it's important to communicate this to the player, because the gimmick is completely unique to this level, and there are no quest markers or text that will explain what to do. Toby Gard goes the extra mile by creating a specific animation for when Lara jumps or climbs onto the giant hand, quickly turning into a gold statue and triggering a game over. If we were to get here after completing the other section of the level, we would have another hint bringing us to the conclusion that we must use the lead ingots on the hand. And even should we not know the famous myth of King Midas, we are still led to believe that something else is to be done here. As for the other room, I like the creative way they used the same gameplay elements in a way that feels fresh and thematic for the level. Here, we have a large room and a series of doors appositoned around it. All the doors have a different texture on top with repeating symbols, and when you manage to climb up the central structure, you find a line of levers. Soon you realize that the symbols could be a binary code, and I enjoy how within the limitations of the engine, they actually managed to create a way to input a code and open different doors. Here, the level follows the usual structure of sectioning challenges. The highlights of this level to me are the sand blocks that once pulled changed the structure of the room above, making it crumble in a new structure used to reach the other side. The room with the timed flames is another mechanical challenge for the player, and one of the harder ones to pull off, but showcases how the character movement, though stiff and clunky, is actually capable of smooth and precise movements if the player is up for the task. Finally, I must point out that another peculiarity of this level is the higher enemy count, and the fact that the spawn triggers are positioned in ways that fill the level more and more as the player progresses, making it relatively dangerous should the player not stop and clear the rooms as they enter them. I also found myself struggling with ammunition more than once in this version of the game. Of course, you can always use the infinite ammo of the standard pistols, but what's the fun in that? As for visual standouts of the level, I like how the palace is presented. The garden is one of the most beautiful backdrops we've explored so far. Here they also included the iconic blade traps that feel taken directly from Prince of Persia. The Cistern is one of the most creative and unique levels in the first Tomb Raider. Even though the game had already shown us that we can manipulate the environment in dramatic ways to progress, as we saw in the previous level with the crumbling room, in that instance, the game simply swapped the room's models to create a different configuration. Here, in the Cistern, the water itself serves as a navigation tool, allowing us to access different parts of the level thanks to the support it gives Lara to reach and manipulate objects that would otherwise be unreachable. The level is structured in a way that requires us to raise and lower the water at least twice in order to gather the 5 different keys needed to progress. The level presents a beautiful palette: green for the lower water, greenish-blue for the high-level water, and muted yellows and bluish-grey tones for the walls and catwalks. With this level, the use of the third dimension is fully justified. None of its traversal would have been possible without a true 3D engine. The level is very intricate and particularly difficult to navigate. We start in a small room where we encounter a new enemy type, the rodents. These giant rats have a rich set of movements. They can run and swim, and they can attack on land as well as in the water. They even stand upright in their idle animation. This characterizes them as nimble and resourceful enemies. The space opens into a large area with multiple paths and a peculiar pool of water beneath us. A catwalk lets us circle around, take in the surroundings, and eventually reach a rusty key left on a balcony. From this higher vantage point, we can easily spot 2 rusty doors, and if we resist the urge to immediately use the rusty key in the first keyhole we see, curiosity and environmental detail might drive us to explore more thoroughly. At the bottom of the room, a copper gate separates us from a golden key. In the central pool, we find 3 narrow passages leading to a sewer system, and ultimately to a room where progress is impossible. In the center area, there are 2 balconies, one easier to reach, and the other marked by a set of stairs and decorative wall carvings that guide our attention toward a silver gate. Following the easier path brings us to the drain control room, where a switch allows us to raise or lower the water level. Traversal changes completely between the 2 water states. When the room is flooded, movement is safer, but exploring the side rooms becomes more dangerous. The pipes and narrow canals are intricate, and the player is threatened by the risk of drowning, especially since quick dives can be tricky when you don't yet know what you're looking for. This part of the level can take a long time and make the player uneasy, especially because most of the stage must be explored in both water states. But this works well, because the segmentation principles we've discussed so far serve as the foundation of the level structure. The Cistern shows how the engine's versatility, even if not fully equipped to handle the concept flawlessly, still allowed the developers to deliver such a unique idea through smart use of the tools available. It's a testament to how a simple set of rules can generate an environment where creativity and personality thrive. When the final door is reached, we are still not done. Entering an arena-like room, the crumbling tiles of the checkerboard floor can drop us into a deadly hazard. A lever appears to be the way forward, but it's actually another trap, releasing a pack of lions that rush out to attack the player. Once the fight is over, we can explore the newly opened room only to discover that we need an elevated point to reach the balcony. Returning to the previous room, we find a block that hides the true exit and can also be used to reach a secret piece of loot on the ledge inside the cage. Draining and flooding rooms remain the core gimmick of the first section, and they also introduce a new element, a block that can float, allowing us to reach a higher ledge once the room is flooded. As we work our way through the sewer system, it's worth noting a secret room that can only be accessed by first locating the correct pressure plates on the floor, then executing a precise sequence of jumps to open the entrance. Once inside, a series of ricochet jumps tests our timing and control as we work toward the reward. This, again, is a very hard to find secret that requires an extremely meticulous scanning of the textures and relies on an invisible game element that is mostly used for triggering events in the game, such as spawn points, or, in this case, secret doors. Other notable examples were the last secret of St. Francis Folly, or the one in the Colosseum, with the invisible pressure plate at the base of the first column on the ground. There is also a commercial reason behind such cryptic secrets. Back then, companies used to sell guidebooks separately from the product, and these opaque mechanics were often implemented in ways that made them nearly impossible to find without a guide. However, I think this is not the case with Tomb Raider, since hiding something unnecessary for progression that gives no clear feedback, in this specific context, adds a lot to the game's mystique, instead of breaking the suspension of disbelief by reminding you that this is part of a business model. The developers knew they should never break immersion, as it is clearly the main focus of the game's design. The winding passageways here are narrower and the hazards more punishing. This level demands precision and a very specific set of movements to succeed. After a while, we reach a large chamber lined with closed cages and a patchwork of different floor tiles. By moving a block, we can open the cages one by one, searching for the 2 keys needed for the door ahead. The process is slow, but the designer relies on the player's curiosity to keep the section engaging. Each cage offers a mix of encounters and resources, maintaining a sense of steady reward. Once again, the save point is located immediately before this room in the European Saturn version, while in the PlayStation version it was moved back into the previous room, which featured a series of tricky jumps, an encounter with aggressive apes, and a death hazard. The next available save point is only accessible after both keys have been found and used. This choice says a lot about the granular level of revision the developers made in just a couple of weeks, as this small change undeniably heightens the tension of what would otherwise be a fairly tame series of challenges. Despite the atmosphere and the build-up, most dangers in the cage room are manageable, with the blades and the rolling boulders being the only truly lethal obstacles. Stepping into the newly opened area, we find the floor collapsed. If you know what to look for, this is another opportunity for a secret. A sequence of ricochet jumps leads to a hidden chamber that requires careful timing to cross the suspended, crumbling platforms. From here, we descend into a submerged cavern. This is a vast chamber with intricate underwater routes, and when we surface in its center, we are greeted by a solemn stone door flanked by 2 centaur-like statues. Now we must explore the underwater cave to find a way to open the massive gate. A switch lies behind a barred enclosure, and deeper inside, we discover the lever that opens it. Only after navigating this maze can we finally throw the switch and unlock the great door. But once the mechanism is activated, one of the statues springs to life, serving as the boss encounter for this set of stages. This is the moment where the supernatural elements the game has hinted at for so long finally take form. The fight itself is nothing special mechanically, and you can even skip it entirely by simply running inside the sepulchre. If you decide to fight after being defeated, the raging fireball-shooting centaur explodes, and each of his disembodied parts explodes as well, putting you at risk of dying even after the fight is technically over. Leaving it alone works just fine. Inside the newly opened chamber, the pedestal that once held the Scion is empty.
A little late for the prize giving, no? Still, it is the taking part which counts.
A familiar voice greets us. Pierre, mocking Lara, and saying we are late for the prize. This is our chance to avenge all the tricks and ambushes he has thrown at us throughout this set of levels. Unlike Larson, whom we previously only had to stun, Pierre must be killed for good. The developers were building up to this moment since the first time we heard about this character, using both exposition and gameplay, cleverly wicked spawn positions and combat encounters, to build the player's dislike, hatred, and disgust for him. Even though the medium of video games had the power to put the player directly in the shoes of the killer, the game humanizes the victim, builds your hatred for him, and then does not give you the choice to spare his life, marking a turning point for Lara's character and how she is portrayed, as well as how we might perceive her. She is confident and rash, and for the first time she directly spills the blood of another human being. After the fight, with the key we find on the corpse of our victim, we open a secret room containing the sarcophagus of Tihocan.
Here lies Tihocan, one of the two just rulers of Atlantis, who even after the curse of the continent had tried to keep rule here in these barren other lands. He died without child, and his knowledge has no heritage. Look over us kindly, Tihocan.
Before the change of scenery that will occur in the next set of stages, I want to spend some more words on the Flashway Back FMV. Here, Lara witnesses what is presented as the true hidden history of the world within the context of the game's fiction, with these godlike creatures, the Atlanteans, giving the spark of technology to humankind. And as the silhouette and the context suggest, the scene draws from the pseudo-historic myth of ancient Sumer, popularized by Zecharia Sitchin, in which the Anunnaki, Sumerian creation divinity figures, were reimagined as extraterrestrial beings who came to Earth to gather gold to restore their planet's atmosphere. In the vision, this imposing silhouette dominates a golden city, and by bringing together the pieces of the Scion, they ignite a flame atop a Mayan-like golden temple. But the conflict begins when one of these beings secretly creates a perverted life form in the darkness, away from the vigilant gaze of the other two equally powerful figures. Once they discover what she has done, they immediately chastise her. A cataclysm destroys cities and nearly resets society, erasing the Atlanteans from history, and we see parts of the Scion scattered across different regions of the globe. After that, we see the same bonding device from the opening of the game, with this figure now imprisoned inside a high-tech containment tube. Through the pictogram on the wall, which Lara reads for us later, we learn that the other two rulers continued to oversee their domain from the most desolate parts of the world until they eventually died, leaving humanity to its own fate. Today, we are more conscious of how attributing the achievements of ancient African and Eastern civilizations to aliens can feel dismissive, since it implies that these cultures could not have developed advanced technology, art, or architecture on their own. But we cannot deny that speculating about the distant past and mixing it with fantasy, especially when no one is claiming it as truth, remains endlessly captivating. Anyway, off we go to Egypt. As we enter, the golden browns of the sand and stones reveal that we are in the African desert. Hieroglyphs are carved everywhere in this place, from the very first block we have to move to the higher platform we need to reach. Here, we are standing in a location where human interaction, and maybe even the presence of the Atlanteans, persisted for the longest time, with traditions carried on for generations after the last God King left this world. At this point, we are advancing in our investigation not only through space, traveling from one location to another, but also through time, uncovering the history of this ancient global culture one piece at a time, tracing the story of the three kings of Atlantis in their respective resting places. And this will remain consistent until the final resolution of the story. As we manage to enter this ancient Earthed city, we cannot see clearly through the thick darkness in front of us. This place is huge, and as we step forward, a giant face emerges from the shadows. Here, you can spot a difference between the Saturn and PlayStation versions. In the PlayStation version, the Sphinx face emerges smoothly from the darkness, revealing the statue's features as we move forward. In the Saturn version, this effect is far less pronounced, and we immediately see the giant face in the dark. Still, it remains a striking sight that hints that something unnatural and incomprehensible is hidden in the place we are about to explore. I like how the actions required to explore mimic the way we, as humans, overcome our fears, and how these actions are suggested mechanically, in a way that resonates differently with different types of players. If we analyze this section deeply, we can imagine that if someone is immersed in the game, spotting a giant face staring at them in the darkness evokes an atavistic fear, which we dispel at a conscious level after taking a few steps forward. I believe this was the intention, especially given the difference I mentioned between the first released version and the later PlayStation release, where the technical differences between the machines allowed the developers to refine this scene more accurately to what they wanted to convey. So we consciously dispel the fear of the giant face, realizing it is just a statue and not something that can harm us. But just as these kinds of constructions in reality were created to strike fear or respect in those who witnessed them, the developers used the same principle in their virtual environment. Once you start exploring the room, which is quite large and rich in details, you can choose many different directions, and each of these choices is valid, but reveals something about the type of player exploring the game. You can steer away from the Sphinx and explore the gate, the obelisk, the water around the obelisk, the side wall with the crumbling sand. Or, if the uneasiness still lingers, you may immediately run toward the Sphinx and move the very obvious block between its paws, revealing a small passage with a keyhole and a door. After that, you can keep exploring the room, but the true means to progress cannot be found until you completely dispel your unconscious fear and reverence for the Sphinx, climb on its shoulder, and find the way around to finally retrieve the key that opens the door in the small chamber below. This key is not well hidden compared to the others we have found throughout the adventure. But what makes it difficult to spot, and what pushes you to explore the room first, is the atavistic fear instilled into your subconscious by that first sight upon entering. Entering the heart of the Sphinx, we reach another plaza-like room. Here, a crystal statue of a cat resides atop an astonishingly decorated altar. The light greenish blue of the column, the warm yellow tones, and the golden floor beneath the idol suggest that this is the ceremonial guardian of a treasure. Something protected with respect, rather than with physical violence or deadly traps. Something religious. The room can be explored, and notably, it has an opening to the outside where we can see sunlight and oasis-like vegetation. Exploring the pool of water in front of the altar leads us to a complex room that, after a series of jumping puzzles, brings us to a balcony guarded by a pesky mutant mummy. It forces the metal fences, making us fall back into the previous room. I cannot tell if this was a conscious choice by the developers, but it happened consistently on the Saturn version and was both annoying and somewhat funny. As for the room with the jumping puzzles, the puzzle itself is not particularly complex, even though it requires some observation to understand the layout. But the highlight for me is the level of love and care poured into these spaces. It is almost palpable how enthusiastic the developers were now that they had more references and textures to work with, enriching this long-lost city with color and visual interest. Their passion and fascination with the subject matter are immediately apparent. It is also important to note how they managed to create a forced line of progression while keeping everything visually connected through small openings, fences, and other obstacles that block traversal but not the line of sight. This gives the stage a sense of place, something that, even if not realistic, is perceived as an actual environment rather than a series of disconnected liminal spaces. This aspect will matter later, because in this set of levels we are exploring a city, which must feel different from the confined places we have explored so far. After we find a way to access the area beneath the cat statue, we reach an arena-like location where we are forced to descend in order to continue. Here, we face a fight with several panthers. And this is a good moment to talk about another peculiar characteristic of Tomb Raider's combat system. In most games, enemies interact with the player through two main behaviors: movement and attack. In Tomb Raider, enemies add another layer. They push Lara around. This is particularly important because it is an attack that should damage the player, but instead it displaces the character. And in a platforming game, this can mean instant death. In other situations, however, this behavior eases the pressure on the player. This single mechanic explains why combat in Tomb Raider feels the way it does: less unforgiving and more dynamic. By allowing certain attacks to deal no damage, the game shifts focus away from combat and onto movement, letting players concentrate on the mechanics they spend most of their time mastering. At the same time, depending on where a combat encounter is placed, the pushing mechanic can be even more lethal than raw damage, creating a kind of critical hit without manipulating damage values. Following the path into the temple, we find a mound of sand or dirt that we can climb to the top, connecting the room with a previously visited area from the beginning of this section. Here, we can flush all of the sand down into the room below, allowing us to access a passage that concludes the level. City of Khamoon is connected to a large temple-like structure, with a massive obelisk rising from a pool of water in the center. All around it, spreading across multiple stories, there are entrances and balconies overgrown with vegetation. Near the base, 4 symbols can be spotted beside the obelisk, but they are impossible to reach because the 4 bridges that connect the outer walls to the obelisk are lifted. The obelisk is something we already saw in the city of Khamoon. The structure is the same, a straight pillar emerging from a pool of water. And in that one, we also saw 4 slots for the items we are about to retrieve here. So our goal is clear, but the way to reach the different switches that control the bridges is hidden in a series of intricate passages connecting the rooms around the obelisk. Back at the beginning, 4 columns hide 4 rooms behind movable blocks, but only one of these rooms contains a key that opens the passage to the obelisk chamber. This is the first level so far that presents dead ends and spaces that are completely detached from our main objective. Some of these areas are also intended as traps, where you fall into a chamber through an opening or a slope, and then must climb back up through a series of dangerous jumps and platforming challenges. I think it is a very smart move to introduce this concept. The traps are a setback. They make you pay with time, as every fail state does. But instead of punishing you with repetition, in the Obelisk of Khamoon, the backtracking requires you to explore more and play more of the game. Here, we must gather the generative parts that form the cycle of human life and society. The Ankh represents the carnal union of male and female that generates endless life. The scarab pushing the sun disk symbolizes the cycle of life and rebirth, but it is also associated with human interaction, trade, and the spreading of culture. The Eye of Horus represents royalty, authority, and the divine manifested through the king. And the Seal of Anubis represents the funerary ritual, closing the cycle of human life lived under submission to the authority of the state. This means that the Atlanteans are not the creators of mankind, but the creators of human culture and society. Aside from the obvious references to the mythology hinted at in the symbols, the obelisk, and the bridges, the rest of the level is connected in a way that makes sense once you are already familiar with its structure. But I like that the setbacks add exploratory value to the level. They are not exactly backtracking. They provide a new challenge, so much so that if the player is the completionist type, this level offers plenty of opportunities to explore and diverge from the beaten path, giving the player more resources than they should have if they stuck only to the mandatory sections. Refining the idea of non-linear exploration and spatial sectioning at its finest. It is also interesting how this level ends up connected to the previous one, the City of Khamoon. The stage gives the illusion that you are reaching back into the previous level. In this room, you also find what is now clearly the replica of the obelisk, and here you can insert the 4 symbols into the niches. After placing the icons in their slots, the heavy stone door opens and leads us to a staircase that brings us into the next level. As soon as we enter, the scale of the place becomes immediately apparent when we see the massive steps rising in front of us. On either side of the staircase, there are 2 fences. One of these is clearly a door with a slot for an artifact that will likely open it. On the opposite side, we can already see the circular icon that will eventually go into the slot to unlock the gate. But we cannot reach it yet, and the only available path is up the stairs. After a long climb, we reach an opening in the ceiling and emerge on the back of a huge statue. Once again, we find ourselves facing a sphinx. I now believe that the entrance to the City of Khamoon presented us with a miniature representation of the entire complex, with that smaller sphinx acting as a preview of the colossal one we see here. The same can be said about the obelisk in the City of Khamoon, which seemed scaled down compared to the gigantic structure in the Obelisk of Khamoon. If we remember the key we found on the back of the previous sphinx, we can climb and check behind this one's head. There, we find 2 slots for 2 ankhs, and between the paws of the sphinx, once again, there is another door that must be opened, most likely in the same way we have done before. Surrounding the enormous monument, we see a complex network of platforms carved into the walls that enclose the gigantic room we are currently exploring. This entire first section of the level is focused on vertical, dangerous exploration. Once the ankhs are retrieved and placed in the slots on the head of the Sphinx, the central door opens. Entering it drops Lara into an impressive pool. The scale matches the room we just navigated. 2 enormous statues stand before us, completely submerged in water. Our goal here is to explore underwater and find a way to lower the water level. We do this by opening the doors located between the feet of the giant statues, flushing most of the water into the empty chambers inside them. Once this is done, we must climb a long, winding slope that takes us back to the entrance on the opposite side of the gate with the circular icon. But as soon as we collect the icon, a centaur and 2 other mutants relentlessly attack us. This fight is extremely difficult, but we can use our newly acquired Uzis to dispatch them. I would also like to note the difference in aggressiveness of these monsters in the Saturn version compared to the PlayStation and PC versions. In the Saturn version, these mutants are absolutely vicious. They are faster than Lara and damage us any time they get within range. In any case, once we are free to continue, we can open the gate and descend into a colorfully decorated chamber, where we find Larson still hurting from our last encounter. The game expects us to kill him, but we can actually sprint toward the Scion and grab it. This way, we spare his life and proceed with the story. In this level, the main challenge for the designer was creating paths along the walls where the inclination of the platforms becomes a trap in itself. You must observe the angle and judge the distance before most jumps. Often, a platform that appears safe turns out to be a major setback or an immediate reload. The level consists of 3 main environments, all part of the same loop, but thematically separated and offering different types of challenges. In the entrance area, the theme is combat, with a fight at the beginning and another one when we return after completing the other 2 sections. In the Sphinx section, the challenge is height, and the tricky camouflaged textures of the platforms, which blend them into the scenery and make their inclination difficult to evaluate. This theme is pushed so far that it even includes a literal invisible platform hiding a secret pickup. The third section presents a diving challenge. We do not yet know what we are looking for, but we must manage our air supply and make multiple deep dives into the largest body of water we have encountered so far. This makes it difficult to judge when to stop exploring the depths and come back up for air. The shape of the statues makes navigation harder, with all the nooks and crannies around their enormous bodies. I also like how the water flushes between chambers like communicating vessels, something the target audience can easily relate to from their basic school knowledge and feel smart about. I also appreciate how the set pieces are highlighted and made memorable by placing them inside a huge pool, where Lara can move freely and fully appreciate the work done on these colossal and detailed models. This sense of scale was not common at the time, and even today can be difficult to convey, despite modern hardware. As we leave the cave with the Scion in our hands, the sudden light of the sun blinds Lara. In that brief moment, Natla and her goons catch her off guard, disarming her and stealing both her weapons and part of the Scion. What I particularly like here is that the dialogue never explicitly implies that Larson was killed. Instead, Natla tells Lara,
"Left Larson sucking wind then, eh?"
If that is the phrase.
a line that suggests a chase rather than a confrontation.
Well, kill her!
Lara takes advantage of the moment, leaps off a cliff, and escapes into the water.
Let's go.
Natla, clearly in a hurry, simply leaves. But now that Lara understands what the Scion truly is, and the power it holds, she cannot let it slip away. The fate of the world is at stake. She pursues the boat in an acrobatic driving sequence. And in a final act of commitment, sacrifices her beloved motorcycle, launching herself into the water near the vessel. Using the splash as a distraction, she sneaks into the storage hatch.
What? Probably just a fish. Maybe some fish, kid. Man, you have got to learn to chill. I'm going back inside. You coming?
Here, the choice to have Lara fall asleep from exhaustion is essential. It reminds us that she has no superpowers. She is just human, even within this fantastical story. Reaffirming her humanity at this point elevates the value of everything she has just accomplished and underscores the sacrifices she is making to pursue her goal. Placed in contrast with Natla, now revealed as an ancient, godlike being, Lara becomes the embodiment of humanity itself. She stands as its last hope. It is a powerful image, even if the emotional impact is partially muted by stiff animations and the rapid pacing of the action. Still, the theme is clear. We are now approaching the lowest point of the story. The antagonist appears to have won. Lara is exhausted, unarmed, and vulnerable. Yet she is not hopeless. There is still a spark left in her, and with it, the determination to try one last time to save the world. Natla's mine immediately throws us into the water. This serves to instill a sense of urgency. We are thematically and mechanically in danger from the very first moment, and we must react quickly. While swimming to regain air, we can spot barrels of industrial waste at the bottom of the cave. This detail is telling. It shows how ruthless Natla is, how hyper-focused she is on her objective, to the point of ignoring even the short-term repercussions of her actions. It suggests that she is overconfident, and maybe that arrogance can be exploited. As we emerge from the water, we find ourselves in an oppressive cavern with black walls that hint at volcanic rock. At the same time, we find clear signs of an abandoned mine. There is machinery everywhere, and as we navigate the area, we encounter a suspended prefabricated structure. This suggests an attempt to establish a headquarters here, meaning Natla's team is confident that what they are searching for is buried in this very place. That realization adds even more urgency. Mechanically, we also need that structure to reach a passage in the wall. The prefabricated unit is connected to a control room of sorts. There are no switches here, only 3 peculiar slots, colored blue and red. It is immediately clear that we must explore the surrounding tunnels to find matching objects. Eventually, we locate 3 fuses. When the structure collapses to the ground, the door breaks open, and inside we find our pistols. We are back to basics. We just came from the high-octane spectacle of Egypt and the sanctuary of the Scion, and now the game strips us of everything except movement. There is danger all around, but no immediate pressure. This moment quietly reinforces an important idea. The pistols are just tools. They do not define Tomb Raider. Exploration, movement, agility, and spatial awareness do. From here, we move into an area guarded by the first of Natla's mercenaries, simply known as Cowboy. At this point, the game presents us with a choice. We can fight him and kill him to retrieve the Magnum pistols, or we can try to avoid him altogether. If we choose the latter, we can preserve our conscience and move forward without killing another human. Continuing through the tunnels. Eventually, we reach a collapsed passage. We cannot go forward, but earlier we passed a room filled with very conspicuous, almost cartoonish TNT crates. One of these crates can be pushed to reach a higher ledge. From there, we find a lever that detonates the TNT and clears the cave in. This leads us into a vast, modern-looking chamber. Concrete pillars and ramps connect opposite sides of the volcano, suspended above flowing lava. Another mercenary appears, Skateboy. It is curious that none of these characters are ever named, despite their distinctive designs. Here, we can loop around the room, using the concrete pillars as the cover, eventually slipping into an opening and escaping while dodging falling lava boulders. This leads to a sandy cave with a three-dimensional block puzzle. It is a clever idea. A classic moving tile puzzle translated into a fully three-dimensional space, reinforcing the labyrinthine and disorienting nature of the level. A lever forces us to run back and forth through the space before finally opening the way forward. We then arrive at an open area dominated by a pyramid-like structure and yet another mercenary armed with a shotgun. Using the environment as cover, we can reach the pyramid. Once we climb onto the entrance arch, he stops shooting, allowing us to complete a jumping sequence and reach a lever. This opens a door where we find the key to access the pyramid itself. Inside, a cutscene plays. Natla places the Scion onto a pedestal, and we see a massive sphere connected by tubes before the screen fades to black. Once again, it is important to note that up to this point, the only human the game truly forces us to kill in order to progress is Pierre.
Pierre, you litterbug.
This stands in sharp contrast to Larson. During their first encounter, Lara explicitly spares his life in a cinematic moment, clearly establishing that she is not a murderer by nature. Pierre instead gives us no alternative. His death becomes a turning point for Lara. It is not a choice, but a consequence, and it marks the first moment where violence leaves a permanent scar. Lara may have wanted a different outcome, but reality does not allow it. This reinforces her humanity. She is not a goddess, and not every situation can be resolved on her terms. When Larson returns later, the responsibility shifts back to the player. This time, we are given a choice. We can kill him, or we can simply run past him and take the Scion. The same applies to the other mercenaries we encounter from this point on. Combat becomes optional, not just mechanically, but thematically. And in that space, the game asks us a quiet but powerful question. Who is Lara Croft? Is she willing to remove anyone who stands in her way, adopting the same ruthless mindset as Natla? Or is she someone who will take the harder path, avoid unnecessary bloodshed, and try to preserve her own moral boundaries, even when facing her enemies? The game never acknowledges this choice explicitly. There is no branching dialogue, no alternate ending. And yet, the option exists. By leaving it in the player's hands, the developers allow us to actively shape Lara as a character. This is where Tomb Raider clearly separates itself from books and films. Despite drawing heavily from cinematic language, dramatic framing, and narrative structures borrowed from older media, the game does something they cannot. It invites the player to participate directly in the creation of meaning. Lara's story is not only something we witness, it is something we perform. Her character is not just written, it is enacted through our actions. And this is the quintessential difference of video games as a medium. They do not simply tell a story. They allow the player to take part in its creation, shaping both the narrative and the character through play itself. The metal golden plates that compose the outer walls are laid over a skin like membrane. Through a rupture in that surface, we descend beneath it, entering what we now understand to be a living, biomechanical industrial installation. We are immediately thrown into a gauntlet. Eggs lining the room begin to hatch one by one, while the doors themselves are made of bone and muscle, reacting independently. Only after we defeat the enemies do these organic barriers open, allowing us to climb into the upper section of the chamber, where muscle-like tissue forms the floor, and more eggs continue to hatch, relentlessly testing us. Through the color palette of this level, we finally understand the choices made earlier in the tomb of Qualopec. The fleshy reds, the bony whites, and the marrow-like yellows were already pointing toward this biomechanical structure. What I want to highlight is how the lore of this discovery is built gradually throughout the game, so that when we finally step into this alien environment, we are ready to accept what we are witnessing. Of course, there are mutants hatching from giant eggs connected to a titanic biomechanical organism. This is precisely what Atlantean technology was about. Mass-producing labor slaves without consciousness, meat robots designed to control and thrive through mindless obedience. Natla, however, attempts to introduce consciousness and individuality through violence and domination, manufacturing a being capable of surviving without any external input, yet ultimately doomed to isolation, having destroyed everything around it. This is self-affirmation achieved through the elimination of competition, a self-destructive mechanism that seeks meaning in domination and in the externalization of the self, violently replacing the world outside with the world within. It is a vision driven by fear and spite towards the external world, which, in its overwhelming desire to be accepted, ends up destroying everything around it, closing the self inside a cage of eternal solitude. This place feels like a proving ground for Natla's creations. They are battle-born, and only the strongest specimens are meant to survive and be mass-produced. Within this cycle of constant violence and rebirth, selection takes place. Eventually, we push through, and Lara begins climbing a series of bone and metal corridors that stretch the surrounding muscle tissue open, forcing a passage. Volcanic rock has overtaken what was once the original structure, compelling the organic matter to grow around the now solidified stone. Here, we witness a struggle for survival. The volcano has consumed much of the structure, destroying organs and passages. Yet the living system reacts, regenerates, and refuses to die. Deeper inside, we reach a massive vertical shaft. Platforms cling to the distant walls, visible but unreachable. We find an opening and begin climbing. Each chamber we pass through presents a different challenge, and as we move higher, fat-like tissues carve new paths through the organism. We are not simply traversing this space. We are reshaping it, adapting it to our needs, slowly establishing Lara as the dominant specimen. In one room, a flooded section echoes the three-gate structure from the tomb of Qualopec. This time, several levers are trapped, spawning mutants from suspended eggs. As we continue upward, the organism itself is altered by our passage, its former inhabitants removed, its systems bent to our will. Another chamber challenges our composure, forcing us to fight while navigating unstable floor geometry. Beyond it, we reach rib-like bones forming a narrow ridge. Passing through a hole, we enter a long flesh tube submerged in lava, using it to cross the room and reach yet another combat encounter. We squeeze through shifting walls, return to the shaft, and are welcomed by a flesh door that opens organically before us. Inside, 4 pillars rise from the lava. A switch rotates them into position, forming a path forward. Once again, we are manipulating a living space to survive. From here, we move through a corridor filled with enraged mutants. The mechanical walls are torn apart here, and the climb becomes a concentrated test of endurance, combining darts, maws, and a rolling boulder in a final attempt to stop Lara. Beyond this, we enter what resembles a throne room. 3 massive thrones are embedded in the walls. By pushing the seat of one, we access an organic door flanked by 2 levers. It opens a hatch that drops Lara toward lethal spikes, But if we jump at the precise moment, we reach a lever that opens the way forward. Inside, we face a centaur and 2 mutants before opening a door formed between columns of living muscle. Beyond it lies a chamber containing 2 fiends and something far more disturbing, a grotesque replica of Lara herself. It appears that the structure has been gathering data all along, finally recreating what it has identified as the dominant specimen. This moment recalls the Shadow Man encounter from Prince of Persia, but Toby Gard does not simply quote that idea. He expands on it. The entire level has been building toward this confrontation. From the initial gauntlet to the eggs, the living architecture, and the cycle of violence, we are clearly moving through a symbolic space of rebirth. At the surface level, this is a biomechanical system that believes strength is forged through adversity. At a deeper level, it mirrors a survivalist worldview, one that values endless growth and ruthless selection. The doppelganger scene also feels uncannily prophetic when we consider what happened to Toby Gard and Lara after the release of Tomb Raider. Unable or unwilling to understand Gard's vision, Eidos marketing refused to follow the direction he proposed, effectively rejecting him, while core design lacked the resolve to support him. Gard ultimately left the company, renouncing the majority of the financial rewards generated by his own creation. I cannot say whether his departure was meant as a deliberate statement or was simply a rushed decision born from a sense of betrayal. But regardless of the motivation, the act itself is powerful enough to invite us to take his vision seriously and to search for deeper meaning in what we experience through Lara. This meta-event inevitably shapes how we construct Lara's image in our collective consciousness. She comes to represent humanity itself, standing in opposition to a machine that seeks only to synthesize what works, stripping craft of personal meaning and individuality in order to make it infinitely reproducible. And just as the doppelganger in Tomb Raider mindlessly copies Lara and falls into a lava pit, the series continued with a string of increasingly hollow entries, stripped of what made the original vision personal and carefully crafted. Lara was reduced to a money printing machine, defined by exaggerated features and oversized weapons, while the atmosphere, care and love poured into every flawed inch of the first game were lost. Without Gard's guiding vision, the series slid downhill, accompanied by a culture of crunch at core design that forced employees into years of relentless production, ultimately culminating in the corporate failure of Angel of Darkness. It is a sad outcome, yet Lara proved resilient enough as a character that Crystal Dynamics eventually picked up the torch, brought Gard back, and delivered Tomb Raider Legend with the respect it deserved, refining the formula, and, most importantly, making it a game again. Viewed through this lens, Toby Gard's decision to leave core design over the loss of artistic control takes on a powerful resonance. The doppelganger is not Lara's shadow. It has no skin, no interiority. It is an image, not a person. Unlike Prince of Persia, where reconciliation comes from lowering one's weapon, here progress requires confrontation. The doppelganger mirrors Lara's every movement, copying her actions perfectly, yet without understanding them. The only way forward is to step where only the original can walk. And because the copy is mindless, incapable of grasping intent or meaning, it follows blindly, running straight into its own destruction in the lava below. I can't say with certainty whether this was Toby Gard's conscious intent or whether his goals were different. But this is the message that reached me through his artistic choices. The game speaks to the idea that identity is not something to be manufactured, copied, or consumed, but something to be claimed and protected. As soon as Lara touches the Scion, another vision from the remote past collides with her mind, revealing the final moments that led to Natla's imprisonment by her former allies, accused of betrayal.
You can't do this.
We condemn you, Natla of Atlantis, for your crimes, for the flagrant misuse of your powers, and for robbing us of ours.
You can't,
Breaking the three bond of consent that our people are ruled and secured under, and invading Tihocan and myself with our army, our warriors, empty from our pyramid, so that you can use the pyramid, its powers of creation, for your own mindless destruction.
Mindless? Look at you! Neither of you have one squirt of inventive juice in your heads. Wasters.
Let's just do it.
Tihocan!
You use the sacramental place as a source of individual pleasure, as some freak factory.
They're survivalists, a new generation.
A slaughter heap now. And you, we're gonna lock you in limbo. Make your veins, heart, feet, and that diseased brain stick solid with frozen blood. Greet your eternal unrest, Natla!
You won't rest either, or your damned continent Atlantis!
They condemn her for creating a new life form without their consent, insisting that every use of their power must be carefully considered and weighed. Natla, instead, acted decisively, convinced she was doing what was necessary, foreseeing a possible cataclysm and the inadequacy of their previous creations. In the end, it almost seems that she was right. Now, after millennia of isolation and constant torment, it's hard to say whether her mind is still intact. Yet her determination appears to have preserved her sanity, transforming it into obsession. She remains committed to her goal, creating a superior life form capable of surviving a global catastrophe. To achieve this, she reshaped the pyramid into a structure that forces an evolutionary process upon her creations, exactly what we witnessed in the previous level. Natla reappears and begins to outline her master plan, confident that Lara poses no real threat and that it is already too late to stop her. But Lara reacts instinctively and attempts to shoot the Scion, an act Natla could never have imagined. The idea that someone would even consider destroying such an unlimited source of power is unthinkable to her. In a desperate attempt to save her operation, Natla lunges at Lara, and the two fall into the abyss below. Lara survives, climbs back up, and above her, the giant egg begins to hatch. The exchange between the Atlanteans, Natla, Tihocan, and Qualopec reveals a deep ideological conflict between stagnation and reckless progress. The story makes it clear that neither extreme leads to a positive outcome. While they tried to force nature into rigid order, Natla seeks to destroy it altogether and replace it with her own creation. Lara, instead, embodies nature itself. Throughout the journey, this force has silently aided us, and now it fully manifests through her. She becomes the last bulwark of nature, succeeding where even the power of a volcano seemed to fail. The level opens with a boss fight against an underdeveloped and horrifying creation of Natla's. It is a twisted torso that drags itself forward using its arms. Despite its pitiful appearance, it is violent and extremely dangerous, and the fight is unavoidable. Once the creature is defeated, a door opens, allowing Lara to climb further upward through the Scion chamber above. After the fight, we encounter a small block puzzle. Once again, if we push the block immediately upon entering the room, we are later forced to pull it back into position. Much like the lever and column puzzle in the tomb of Qualopec, the game reminds us, even at its very end, that we must understand our actions. Mindlessly pressing buttons or pushing blocks will not work. This lesson also frames the mindset required for a second playthrough, especially if we want to uncover every secret. Beyond the puzzle, we must flee from speeding boulders and climb through a final, dangerous obstacle course. We find a crumbling tile, and when we step onto it, we drop back into the Scion altar room. This time, we can finally shoot the Scion, triggering a chain reaction that causes the pyramid to collapse. We rush toward the exit and notice solidified lava along the side of the bridge, which allows us to drop down and escape through the final obstacle course, ending with one last jump and a final plunge into a square pool of water. Emerging from it, we find ourselves atop the pyramid. Natla, having survived the fall, reveals her wings and attacks. Once again, we are given a choice. We can simply run past her, climbing the serpentine caverns along the pyramid's edge and reaching the summit. Or we can choose to fight her. If we decide to confront Natla, she serves as the final boss with two distinct phases. In the first, she flies through the air, firing projectiles at Lara. In the second, grounded but no less dangerous, she runs and attacks using her arm cannon. The ending cinematic shows the pyramid erupting in flames as Lara escapes by boat, moments before the entire island is erased from the map by a massive explosion. I want to close this analysis by reminding everyone that, like all art, the experiences we live through games are deeply personal. However, the language used in games shapes the path we follow as players, guiding our personal experiences through a shared structure. At the time Tomb Raider was created, this language was still in its infancy. Yet, within this game, we can already find influences and solutions that would later solidify into the foundations of video game storytelling. Even today, in 2025, as we continue to explore the possibilities of interactive media and see its language reshaped by social and political contexts, certain fundamentals remain unchanged. They form the grammar of video games. The levels in Tomb Raider could have followed the safe path of disconnected challenges, but instead they work relentlessly to create the illusion of place and interconnectivity, grounding Lara's world as plausible and tangible rather than abstract or vague. Every stage is designed around the idea that we are traveling through space and time to uncover something that even the developers could not fully define with certainty. This mirrors the thrill of archaeological discovery, of peering into the past through fragments, evidence, and incomplete testimonies. The game never over-explains or forces interpretation onto the player. Each level becomes a dialogue, a compromise between freedom and constraint. Lara can navigate her world with remarkable liberty, yet her limits are dictated by geometry that is deliberately non-restrictive, because it seeks to mimic real places. To achieve this, the designers had to relinquish a degree of control over what the player might do at any given moment. This is what makes the world of Tomb Raider feel alive. While playing, we can allow ourselves to believe we are visiting a real place, not just solving a sequence of challenges. The use of color throughout the journey is masterful, and the love, care, and sense of discovery experienced by the developers themselves resonate clearly through the work. These creators, for the first time, were able to construct tangible 3D spaces, drawing from history books, photographs, and imagination, traveling across time and cultures to build this world. All of this is palpable as you participate in this collective work of art, one that carries the spirit of 1996 from the walls of core design, spreading across time and space to become a shared experience among players worldwide. More than anything, it connects you to yourself, past and future alike. And that is something only true art can achieve. The proof lies in the fact that we are still playing these games, still analyzing them, and still feeling the need to share our experiences with others who we know will understand exactly what we felt.